headphones are not great here. Okay.
Welcome to Atlanta Community Profiles, a show about living in Atlanta and purchasing a home here. Atlanta Community Profiles is hosted by Lou Whelan, who will talk to experts who know this ever-changing city and its real estate industry. We'll talk to mayors, community leaders, and residential real estate experts. Now, here's Lou Whelan with this week's Atlanta Community Profiles.
Hello there and welcome to our show. My name is Lou Whelan. I publish the official relocation guides for the first multiple listing service of Atlanta. And we have one for the metro area, one for North Fulton in partnership with the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, one for Gwinnett County in partnership with the Gwinnett Chamber, one for Cobb County in partnership with the Cobb Association of Realtors, and one for Inside 285. They are available at Chambers of Commerce and Realtors offices around the city at no charge. Stop in and pick up a free copy. They're on my website, AtlantaCommunityProfiles.com, and I'm a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Georgia Properties, and my website is LouWhelan.com. And let me know if I can help you with any of your investment or commercial or residential real estate needs, and I'll be more than happy to do so. And just a quick summary through November. Sales, units sales were up 3.8%, but volume was up 9.3%. And 2017 is on track to be the highest average sales price of homes on record. And that beats back in the old days of 2007 and 8. Inventory is down almost 10% from last year. And it is what is called a seller's market for homes under 500 and a buyer's market for homes over 1 million. Home values are up 69% since the bottom of March 2012. So that's just a quick summary of the market. And every week, as you know, we interview community leaders, people who are contributing to the well-being of our city. And today we are happy to welcome back Liz Hausmann. Great to have you back, Liz. Thanks for coming on the show again.
Pleasure to be with you.
Last time we talked about the same thing we're going to talk about today, I think, and that's transportation.
Seems to be the never-ending problem.
Really. We're hoping that it won't be always a problem, but Liz is Vice President of Government Affairs of the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce and is Commissioner for District 1 of Fulton County, representing Northeast Fulton County, including the cities of Alpharetta, Johns Creek, Roswell, and Sandy Springs since 2012. Since in 2002, she was on the Fulton County Board of Education, and she was elected to the inaugural Johns Creek Council in 2006. And she has received numerous awards and has been on numerous committees and boards of directors, and it would take too long to list them all. But I will tell you that she's been recognized for her achievements throughout the metro area. And she has been the public policy coordinator for the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce since 2013. She's a Georgia native and daughter of a public school teacher and Episcopal priest. Resides in Johns Creek and has 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren, and 2 step-grandchildren. Mm-hmm. Right, that doesn't roll off the tongue too well, the grandchildren.
Big family.
I know. It does sound like a big family. Okay, so welcome to the show, and the Atlanta Business Chronicle and all the several other internet news sources that I've looked at recently talked about a meeting that you guys had. You and all the commissioners for Fulton County and the mayors met recently to talk about a number of issues, but primarily for transportation. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we met last Thursday to unveil and decide how to proceed with our transit study that's been underway since February. We've been meeting, the mayors and the county commissioners have been meeting on a regular basis for the last 3 years. That's really, in my opinion, what allowed us to go to the voters with the 0.75% sales tax for general infrastructure transportation improvements last November that passed. When we started meeting, the topic of transportation naturally bubbled up as the commonality that everybody had in Fulton County and how to address it. And we worked through that. If you recall, the city of Atlanta was allowed to have a separate vote from the rest of Fulton County. They included transit expansion in their sales tax referendum last November. We only did roads and bridges and bike paths and sidewalks and typical infrastructure included in the project list for the rest of Fulton County. So now we're starting to talk about what would transit look like, where would it go, what mode could it possibly be to help us in the quickest and the most economical way.
So this is a group of mayors of all Fulton County?
Fulton County has 15 cities now. There's only a very, very small portion of Fulton County that's not in a city. So it's a different dynamic for Fulton County. We are not providing city-like services any longer. So we don't do park and rec. We don't do community zoning. We don't do transportation as far as the physical, the cities handle all that, public works. But we do have a lot in common with our court system and our water system and our election system and our health care system. And the list is pretty lengthy, animal control, things that we do work on together. But basically what I think we can do more than anything is look at the county as a whole, recognize the uniqueness we have with all of our individual cities, and bring us all together so that we can communicate. Because after all, we do represent the same people.
So you have 15 people as mayors, and then how many commissioners? 7
commissioners. I will honestly tell you that the city of Atlanta does not participate in our meetings on as regular a basis as the other cities do. I'm hoping that that'll change after January.
Okay. So but you basically don't really have any jurisdiction or authority over transportation. That is a state issue. Is that right? You don't.
Well, it's interesting because the CIDs that are located within Fulton County, we now have 8 of them. Fulton County has board members on all of those CID boards. We work closely with the CIDs. We work closely with the state on transportation issues. For example, when the bridge collapsed, it was in Fulton County. It was in the city of Atlanta. There was a lot of coordination there between MARTA, GDOT, CERTA, the county, trying to make sure that everything was repaired in a timely manner, which happened in such a timely manner. It's hard to believe it only was 6 weeks. So but yeah, we have worked as partnerships with the cities over the years, and we still provide the water services in most of the county. So when any major road project is done, of course, there's utility issues that have to be addressed. That's one of the things people I don't think realize, but in all these transportation projects, most of them require water lines to be moved.
Mm-hmm. So what is the name of this group of people, the mayors and the commission? Do you have a formal name for the group?
We just call it the mayor's meeting, the commissioners and the mayor's meeting. We haven't come up with some jazzy name or anything. I will honestly tell you, though, that it's a working group. And people come and they dedicate a couple hours to meeting with their comrades in the other parts of the county. There's great dialogue. There's good relationships that have been built because of these meetings. Mm-hmm. And, if you can't talk about your issues, you can't make any progress, and we're talking. So it's good.
Mm-hmm. So there are 15 incorporated, 8 of which I think are in South Fulton. And
6 in North Fulton.
And so, there's a big difference in many respects between North and South Fulton. South Fulton is actually the largest city, I think, now in Fulton County, except for the city of Atlanta, with 100,000 people. And they had a name change, and now they're going back to the old name. So, do you collaborate with the two, the North and South? Do you collaborate? Do you have any mutual issues? Or?
Well, yeah, we do. And currently, the county is still providing a lot of the services for the new city of South Fulton, so we are very involved in their day-to-day operations still at this point. Mayor Edwards was at our meeting last week, so South Fulton, city of South Fulton, is engaged with the rest of the cities. Yeah, we're different, but we have a lot in common as well, and it's okay to be different.
It is, and one thing they have down there is a lot of land that's reasonably priced, and not something that we have on the North Fulton
I'm
side.
telling you, the growth of the future is going to happen in South Fulton County.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. I hope you're listening down there in South Fulton, because we're thinking about you. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm Lou Wieland, and we're sitting here with Liz Hausmann, who is Vice President of the North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, and also on the Board of Commissioners for Fulton County, representing Alpharetta, Sandy Springs, Roswell, and Johns Creek.
All of Johns Creek, the east side of Alpharetta and Roswell, and Panhandle of Sandy Springs, correct.
Okay, so I'm glad we got that straightened out. So. The thing that is most interesting to people, the two issues are transportation and education. And so what I'd like to talk about today is, just the transportation mainly, but you had a 6-month study on and you revealed the results at that meeting recently with the mayors and the county commissioners. And can you give us a feel for the results of the study, or what kind of information it helped us understand better?
Well, first of all, it's quite complicated, and second of all, it's quite expensive. And depending on what type of transportation network is selected, the cost can vary greatly. I think the most important thing that we can do from our perspective without the funding in place is to come up with a plan, identify the need, identify what type of mode of transportation might fit a particular area. So that's really what we've done. Before we started this exercise, the plan was heavy rail up to Windward Parkway from North Springs. So that would have provided us north-south connectivity, of course, but a lot of people, including me, didn't really feel like that would really address the problem of congestion in North Fulton, because there was no east-west connectivity. There was still the issue of traffic to get to the train stations and the parking and all of the logistics along with that, plus the cost. You're talking $300 million a mile for heavy rail. It's quite expensive take about 20 years to get all the way up to Windward Parkway. So it's not a solution that's going to help us much, say, while the construction at 400 and 285 is underway.
Mm-hmm.
There are other modes, though, that can be done a lot quicker and are not as expensive, and that they would still give you what is most important to any of this conversation, and that's the right-of-way. So, for example, bus rapid transit or BRT, being a dedicated lane, would have stations, would have limited stops, so it's deemed to be rapid transit.
Sort of like an express and a local
is.
subway in New York. Then we had express stops and local stops, and make sure you got on the express train because you'll be there forever otherwise.
Yeah. But if you have that in place and you have that dedicated right of way, and should your density increase, your population increase, your needs increase, it could be converted to a different mode, to light rail or heavy rail or something else of the future that we don't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't take advantage of the will right now to address the transit needs and at a minimum get that right-of-way established, we are going to be in serious trouble in the future.
So if you drive up 400 from 285, you'll notice that they're clearing a lot of land on either side. Tell us about that. What's happening there?
That is part of the 285 400 interchange improvement, and it is a part of the managed lane system that GDOT is putting in on Georgia 400. And what they're doing is they're creating access roads that run parallel to Georgia 400. They will do that construction first so that when the true construction begins on 285 and 400 itself, there will be alternatives for traffic to be diverted to during that construction period. When it's done, you'll have a larger network of roadway there at that intersection. It's also going to include a bike path that's going to go underneath 285, so it's going to connect OTP and ITP on a pedestrian walkway bike trail.
Wow, that's very cool. You know, in other cities, I've lived in a lot of cities around the country, and public transportation is very well accepted. I lived in New York City for 10 years, and everybody took public transportation. But in Atlanta, nothing. We really don't. And there seems to be a reluctance to use it, but it's more the people who move here from other cities are relying on our bus transportation, especially from 400. People who live in Alpharetta have no problem going down there and getting on the bus and getting on and riding on the bus to Midtown or downtown jobs. So maybe that is a good way with the bus lane.
Well, and I think that businesses are starting to require it when they're looking at where they're going to locate. They want to be near a transit station of some sort. The younger people, it's part of their natural psyche to take advantage of other types of transportation. Maybe it's the Uber generation that got them used to not relying on their own cars.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely a shift in perspective. You know, the bridge collapse opened a lot of eyes as well.
Mm-hmm.
People had to figure it out, different ways to get around town during that time period. And so I think a lot of folks tried either the Greta bus rapid system or MARTA that had never done it before. And they have Wi-Fi on the buses. They're very comfortable. So I do think that there's an attitude change.
I think I read recently that the median household income in your district is almost $90,000.
It's a affluent area, well-educated, family-focused community, yes.
And they pretty much commute to Midtown, most of them.
A lot of them go to
downtown.
well, that's what we've discovered in the study we've done. Perimeter Center is a big employment center, Buckhead, big employment center, but a lot of Midtown and downtown folks. Surprisingly, yes.
So with the high income and comes well-educated, do you wonder if there's any kind of a correlation between education and income and willingness to use public transportation?
I think it's a quality of life issue. I think folks are happy that they have a beautiful home and some place to spread out, and schools are good, and faith communities are strong, great parks, got the river. all kind of amenities in North Fulton. But they're spending 2 hours a day sitting in their car in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quality of life issue. They're missing their kids' ball games. So I think there is definitely a balance. Even with the managed lanes, folks don't necessarily do it every day. But if they have a time crunch and they want to hop in that lane and pay a few extra dollars to get somewhere on time, you'll see people doing that as well. So I think that I think we're at the cusp of a big change in our transportation network.
Well, they have those over on 85. How has that worked out for them?
I think it's worked out well, and they're also getting ready to open up on 75 and 575. Mm-hmm. So, and that's public-private partnership. Mm-hmm. I think that's another way that we're going to accomplish any of this is to have some partnerships. There's a private rail service that's just opened up in South Florida. So I think you're going to see a lot of innovation coming forward in the near future.
Well, I mean, I know in New York, the CEOs of big companies even take the train to work, from Greenwich, Connecticut. All these guys are make 10 or 15, 20 million a year, get on the train just like everybody else and commute on down to
There's no stress. They can catch up on their day or take a nap. Mm-hmm. There's just no stress.
So this is not any kind of a socioeconomic thing. It's just a necessity of life.
It's a quality of life issue.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. I am Lou Whelan, sitting here with Liz Hausmann, who's Vice President of North Fulton Chamber of Commerce and is on the Board of Commissioners for Fulton County, representing an extremely affluent segment of Atlanta, maybe the most affluent even. But we're trying to zero in on transportation, as that is her area of expertise. And so tell us a little bit about the state transit and how they interact with the mayors and commissioners, and I'm not too sure their respective roles and authority lines. And
again, this is a little confusing to most people, and it's kind of interesting to have you describe me as a transportation expert, because 6-7 years ago I was hardly that. I've learned a lot in this process. MARTA is our transit authority in the metro Atlanta region for DeKalb, Fulton, and Clayton County, which has just come online, and that is the system that provides heavy rail service. There are a multitude of transit authorities throughout the state, in just about every community that has any population whatsoever, whether it's limited to just senior-type medical transportation or a bus system in Columbus or Augusta, something like that. But there are transit systems throughout the state. But there is no state funding that supports the transit systems. It's really up to the local communities to fund that. 2 years ago, I believe, maybe 3, they dedicated $75 million to transit, set up a grant program. So transit systems from throughout the state asked for grant assistance for special things that they needed, mostly capital items. That was really the first time that the state had actively supported, by the way of funding, any of the transit operations throughout the state, with the exception of the express bus service that Greta offers. So this past session, the House set up a study committee, and it's called the Regional Transit Funding and Governance Committee.
Wow.
And
I hope they don't get paid by the word.
yes. So anyway, the commission's been meeting, and I was named to it. Chairman of Gwinnett County Commission is on there, Charlotte Nash. A commissioner from Cobb County, Commissioner Ott, is on it, as well as legislators, Chamber of Commerce folks from around the state, some CID representation, a MARTA representation, a GRETA representation. So we've been meeting and looking at transit throughout the state. Pretty much it was easy to determine a priority areas, and obviously the metro is the priority, the number one focus of what we're looking at. But that said, there are two other areas that will be looked at after the metro is dealt with, and that is the larger cities throughout the state and then the rural communities. But it's been interesting because the speaker is very much aware and supportive of the work of the commission. The governor seems to be open to helping figure out how the state can support transit needs because the business community is demanding it. You look at the recent Amazon effort. Transit is the number one criteria. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely on the box that all these companies are looking at that they want checked off. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see some meaningful legislation come forward that looks at the ARC region, what transit is there, what it needs, what sort of new governance could be put in place that would be supported by the state. And I think you're going to see some creative financing, some new sources of money, some efforts to bring in some private partnerships to seriously address the transit needs in the ARC region.
Mm-hmm. So what about fuel costs and energy and pollution, and is that something that you guys look at too as an element in the equation?
Well, one of the things that we are looking at is trying to keep up with the latest technology with all these automated vehicles and electronic vehicles and all these new, they've got these magnetic little smart cars that can hook into each other randomly. And
I played with those when I was 5 years old.
I know. It's like George Jetson or something. But it's coming. It's really coming. And it's evolving so quickly. But if we are smart, we will get the right-of-way and get the pathways in place so that whatever the mode is, whatever the vehicle is, mm-hmm. We'll have the place for that to be utilized.
When we get back after the break in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the growth and how that will be assimilated into our way of life in North Fulton and South Fulton, because South Fulton will be growing maybe proportionally faster than North Fulton for the simple reason that they have more land and lower prices for land. So stay tuned, be right back. Welcome back. I'm Lou Whelan with Liz Hausmann, who is Vice President of the North Fulton Chamber and on the Board of Commissioners for Fulton County. And her area of expertise and involvement is particularly with the issue of transportation. And the ARC tells us that we'll gain about over the number of people who live in Charlotte, which is, I think, 2 million, mm-hmm. will come to Atlanta in the next 20 years or so. Now, are you guys looking at that as part of the equation in terms of, or more addressing now or long-term, or how do you look at that?
I don't think anything we do today is for us. It's for the kids that are coming along after us, 20 and 30 years from now. So yes, we are planning for the future. It's an interesting dynamic, though, because you're right. The available land is in the southern part of the county. Density in North Fulton would require more units per acre, and that is a community conversation that, depending on where you're talking about, if it gets support or not, and I think it's limited support at best. You don't want to see more than 6 stories in most areas that have been designated for high density at this point in North Fulton. So if you're talking 2 million people are going to come to Fulton County, I would say the majority of those folks would be in the areas of Midtown, Buckhead, downtown, just because density is allowed. Mm-hmm. That being said, we have to plan for how these folks are going to get around, because people don't necessarily just stay right where they live. They go all over the place. They work in other places and whatnot. The condition in South Fulton is that the needs are more for economic development purposes to attract businesses. And in North Fulton, we're so congested. We need relief from that congestion. There are folks that think that, we're full and that we need to deal with what we have currently. Well, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So we have to plan, but the reality is that we're trying to get people moving in a very congested area in the north part of the county, and in the south part of the county, they really are embracing transit expansion because they look at it as an economic development vehicle.
They're a little ahead of the game because of the fact that they do have, we're looking at transportation down there, and they aren't that crowded anyway, and it's coming, though. So they really have that distinct advantage in preparation.
Yeah, it's a lot better to have the network in place and build around it than to have the community fully developed and try and, squeeze it in.
What about economic development on the in the county? Are you finding a lot of pushback from companies as a result of some of our transportation issues, or how big a part of the equation is that playing?
Well, honestly, MARTA is very attractive to a lot of businesses looking at Fulton County. I think that we are in good shape in that regard if you're just looking in the density areas of Fulton up to Sandy Springs. It's when you get past that it's starting to have some sort of I don't want to say negative, because North Fulton is booming. There's no question. Mm-hmm. We've got technology companies and very, very robust economy in North Fulton. But there are a few companies that have left North Fulton to be closer to transit. State Farm is one of them.
Mercedes was coming in.
Well, they came from Jersey, but they didn't leave, North Fulton to move in town. But there are companies that are doing that.
So what do you see as a future in terms of, what's your vision? Do you have a kind of a vision for like a 5-year, 10-year period for transportation?
It's such a long-term process that I'm very encouraged by the public feedback we've gotten. And I really want to gauge what they think of what we're presenting to them. I'm not sure what they are willing to pay for. I do think that most people now, though, recognize that we've got to do something.
So it's really a question of money, right? It's taxes.
It's always about the money. It's always about the money.
Always about the money.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really about taxes. How much are you willing to pay in taxes or save time?
And it's also a density question. We have density now, and there's some that think that if we had a train at 400, that it would bring more density and perhaps not solve the problem, but make it, just as bad. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have a lot to work through. But the good news is that we've identified the need, and I think we've got a pretty comprehensive plan for the public to look at and let us know what they think about it.
So I know Jerry Wood was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he's looking at a lane for buses, just a bus lane, one way in the morning and one way, or coming back at night, or one on each side. How do you like that idea?
Well, that would be bus rapid transit, and that would be the management.
But that'd be for passenger cars, though.
Well, that would be for passenger cars?
I'm sorry, the managed lane would be for passenger car, where you pay for, and then you have another lane for buses.
I think you'd have to combine them with our limited space at this point.
So
and there are models. We've taken a couple of field trips, if you will. We went out to Plano, Texas, and looked at their system. We went out to Los Angeles, and they have a really robust BRT system in Los Angeles. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it on city streets. It's called ART, Aerial Rapid Transit, but it's virtually the same thing, but you share the lane with other cars. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but you have to have that designation of that right of way.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Liz, and thanks for your service to the community. I know you put in some long hours, and we appreciate your service to the community. And now stay tuned for Dr. Bill Williams, Chairman and CEO of Swanee Dental Care, our dental health expert.